Why, hello there. Thanks again for joining me today. Um, Sorry I missed yesterday. It was a very, very bad mental health day. I'm just starting to come out of it now. So I figured I would just keep things simple today, be nice and comfy on my couch and my nice sweater. Um, and we're just going to continue with where we left off on Monday. So, oops, that's not the right place. My little bookmark fell out. But we are continuing on in the book of Genesis. And the last we heard, Abram and Lot, their uncle and nephew, they separated, and Lot took the whole Jordan Valley for himself, and Abram settled somewhere else. But the Lord promised Abram that his descendants would inherit the land that Lot has chosen. Lot chose the best land, and the Lord has promised Abram that he doesn't need to worry. His descendants are also going to one day rule that land. So now we're on to chapter 14. So Abram rescues Lot. About this time, King Amraphel of Babylonia, King Arioch of Elasar, King Chedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goyim attacked King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Shinab of Admah, King Shemabar of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, also known as the city of Zoar. King Chedorlaomer, I don't know. If somebody knows how to say this name, please let me know. I'm going to do my best. King Chedorlaomer and his allies had ruled these last 5 kings for 12 years. But in the 13th year, the kings rebelled and came together in Sodom Valley, which is now covered by the southern part of the Dead Sea. A year later, King Chedorlaomer and his allies attacked and defeated the Raphites in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzites in Ham, and the Emites in Sheva Kiriathaim. They also defeated the Horites in the hill country of Edom, as far as El Paran, near the desert. They went back to the city of En-Mishpat, better known as Kadesh. Then they captured all the land that belonged to the Amalekites, and they defeated the Amorites who were living in Hazazon Tamar. At Sodom Valley, the armies of the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, King Chedorlaomer of Elam, King Tidal of Goyim, King Amraphel of Babylonia, and King Arioch of Elasar. The valley was full of tar pits, and when the troops from Sodom and Gomorrah started running away, some of them fell into the pits. Others escaped to the hill country. Their enemies took everything of value from Sodom and Gomorrah, including their food supplies. They also captured Abram's nephew Lot, who lived in Sodom. They took him and his possessions and then left. At this time, Abram the Hebrew was living near the oaks that belonged to Mamre, the Amorite. Mamre and his brothers Eshcol and Aner were Abram's friends. Someone who had escaped from the battle told Abram that his nephew Lot had been taken away. 318 of Abram's servants were fighting men, so he took them and followed the enemy as far north as the city of Dan. That night, Abram divided up his troops, attacked from all sides, and won a great victory. But some of the enemy escaped to the town of Hobah, north of Damascus, and Abram went after them. He brought back his nephew Lot, together with Lot's possessions and the women and everyone else who had been captured. Abram is blessed by Melchizedek. Abram returned after he had defeated King Chedorlaomer and the other kings. Then the king of Sodom went to meet Abram in Sheva Valley, which is also known as King's Valley. King Melchizedek of Salem was a priest of God Most High. He brought out some bread and wine and said to Abram, "I bless you in the name of God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. All praise belongs to God Most High for helping you defeat your enemies." Then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "All I want are my people. You can keep everything else." Abram answered, "The Lord God Most High made the heavens and the earth, and I promised him that I won't keep anything of yours, not even a sandal strap or a piece of thread. Then you can never say that you are the one who made me rich. Let my share be the food that my men have eaten." But Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre went with me, so give them their share of what we brought back. Chapter 15. The Lord's promise to Abram. Later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision. "Abram, Don't be afraid. I will protect you and reward you greatly." But Abram answered, "Lord, all powerful, you have given me everything I could ask for, except children. And when I die, Eliezer of Damascus will get all I own. You have not given me any children, and this servant of mine will inherit everything." That escalated quickly. First, it started off, "You've given me everything." And I was like, wait a minute. You haven't given me any kids, and you're going to let my servant inherit everything. Kind of funny. The Lord replied, "No, he won't. You have a son of your own. You will have a son of your own, and everything you have will be his." Then the Lord took Abram outside and said, "Look at the sky and see if you can count the stars. That's how many descendants you will have." Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord was pleased with him. The Lord makes another promise to Abram. The Lord said to Abram, "I brought you here from Ur in Chaldea, and I gave you this land." Abram asked, "Lord God, how can I know the land will be mine?" Then the Lord told him, "Bring me a 3-year-old cow, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a dove, and a young pigeon." So this is a gory warning. For anybody who doesn't know, the Bible has several gory things in it. So I probably won't be able to warn you every time, but here's the one part that's coming up. So Abram obeyed the Lord. Then he cut the animals in half and laid the 2 halves of each animal opposite each other on the ground. But he did not cut the doves and pigeons in half. And when birds came down to eat the animals, Abram chased them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and everything became dark and frightening. Then the Lord said, "Abram, you will live to an old age and die in peace." Sounds like a lot of YouTube comments that people like to put when they're first. "But I solemnly promise that your descendants will live as foreigners in a land that doesn't belong to them. They will be forced into slavery and abused for 400 years. But I will terribly punish the nation that enslaves them, and they will leave with many possessions. 4 generations later, your descendants will return here and take this land, because only then will the people who live here be so sinful that they deserve to be punished." And I think I highlighted this probably a few years ago when I was a kid, because I always thought this was really interesting. This is kind of getting a little bit into the heart of God, the mind of God, and why he does what he does. So he doesn't just instantly smite people who have done something wrong. We don't obviously get a full, complete history of the world here because this would fill up way too many books. But we can kind of see here that when God punishes people, he waits until the time when it's the right time, because God holds in his hand and in his mind every timeline, every possible outcome that could ever happen for anything that any human or any other thing that could ever happen. He knows all of it. So when he does something, it has to be very precise. He knows exactly when he's going to do what he wants to do. And the fact that we're not God means that when we ask him to do something and it's not the right time, we don't always know why it's not the right time. And to us, it doesn't make any sense. But we don't know the minds of everyone around us. We don't know the future. We just don't know. All we can see is our own experience. But God cares about everybody and everything that's happening everywhere, at every time, in the future, in the past. He has to hold all of that and be very careful and diligent with his plans. And so when he says, because only then will the people who live there be so sinful that they deserve to be punished, this is kind of saying it's not something where God is just kind of willy-nilly handing out punishments just because. He knows what he's doing. And in the background of this, these people who will be so sinful they deserve to be punished, I can imagine that before this event that God has foretold, God will be sending prophets and other people to tell them how to live right. We'll see various stories in the Bible where some people do accept that message and turn from their sinful ways and repent and turn to God. And there's other times when people just laugh at the prophets, they laugh at God's message, and they just do whatever they wanted to do, and sometimes 10 times worse. So it's not just God punishing people. In the background of all this, there was probably a lot of warnings, a lot of help that God tried to give before he, instigated this solution that would keep other people from being hurt. So God doesn't just let evil happen. When you're sitting and thinking about somebody who's done you so much wrong and hurt, God is also feeling that as well. But he knows the right time to do something about it. That will be the most benefit for you and also the person who's hurting you. Sometime after sunset, when it was very dark, a smoking cooking pot and a flaming fire went between the two halves of each animal. At that time, the Lord made an agreement with Abraham and told him, I will give your descendants the land east of the Shihor River, on the land on the border of Egypt, as far as the Euphrates River. They will possess the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Chapter 16, Hagar and Ishmael. Some of you might know about this story. We actually wrote about it on my blog when we talked about women of the Bible. Chapter 16. Abram's wife Sarai had not been able to have any children, but she owned a young Egyptian slave woman named Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, the Lord has not given me any children. Sleep with my slave, and if she has a child, it will be mine. Abram agreed, and Sarai gave him Hagar to be his wife. This happened after Abram had lived in the land of Canaan for 10 years. Later, when Hagar knew she was going to have a baby, she became proud and was hateful to Sarai. Then Sarai said to Abram, it's all your fault. I gave you my slave woman, but she has been hateful to me ever since she found out she was pregnant. You've done me wrong, and you will have to answer to the Lord for this. So this is a point where God has told Abram very clearly what is going to happen, but of course, it's sometimes hard for humans to understand where God is coming from. And sometimes that's why we sin. We turn away from God. We do what we want to do. So even though Abram has been told very clearly that he's going to have more children, he doesn't believe God. And so he and Sarah, come up with this plan to have Abram have a child by their slave woman, Hagar. And of course, it doesn't go very well for any of these parties because they haven't stuck with what God has told them. It all works out for good in the end, but that's kind of an interesting point of how when we think we're doing the right thing, when we know it clearly goes against what God has told us is right, we're probably going to be very, not very pleased with the results. And, Sarah's blaming Abraham, even though this sounds like this was a plan that they both came up with together. Abram said, all right, she's your slave and you can do whatever you want with her. But Sarah began treating Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. Hagar stopped to rest at a spring in the desert on the road to Shur. While she was there, the angel of the Lord came to her and asked, Hagar, where have you come from, and where are you going? She answered, I'm running away from Sarai, my owner. The angel said, go back to Sarai and be her slave. I will give you a son who will be called Ishmael, because I have heard your cry for help. And later I will give you so many descendants that no one will be able to count them all. But your son will live far from his relatives. He will be like a wild donkey fighting everyone, and everyone fighting him. Hagar thought, have I really seen God and lived to tell about it? So from then on, she called him the God who sees me. That's why people call the well between Kadesh and Bered the well of the living one who sees me. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to their son, and he named him Ishmael. God's promise to Abraham. Chapter 17. Abram was 99 years old when the Lord appeared to him again and said, I am God all-powerful. If you obey me and always do right, I will keep my solemn promise to you and give you more descendants than can be counted. Abram bowed with his face to the ground, and God said, I promise that you will be the father of many nations. That's why I now change your name from Abram to Abraham. I will give you a lot of descendants, and in the future, they will become great nations. Some of them will even be kings. I will always keep the promise I have made to you and your descendants, because I am your God and their God. I will give you and them the land in which you are now a foreigner. I will give the whole land of Canaan to your family forever, and I will be their God. Abraham, you and all future members of your family must promise to obey me. As the sign that you are keeping this promise, you must circumcise every man and boy in your family. From now on, your family must circumcise every baby boy who is 8 days old. You must even circumcise any man or boy you have as a slave, both those born in your homes and those you buy from foreigners. This will be a sign that my promise to you will last forever. Any man who isn't circumcised hasn't kept his promise to me and cannot be one of my people. Abraham, your wife's name will now be Sarah instead of Sarai. I will bless her, and you will have a son by her. She will become the mother of nations, and some of her descendants will even be kings. Abram bowed with his face to the ground and thought, I am almost 100 years old. How can I become a father? And Sarah is 90. How can she have a child? So he started laughing. Then he asked God, why not let Ishmael inherit what you have promised me? But God answered, no, you and Sarah will have a son. His name will be Isaac, and I will make an everlasting promise to him and his descendants. I have heard what you asked me to do for Ishmael, and so I will also bless him with many descendants. He will be the father of 12 princes, and I will make his family a great nation. But your son Isaac will be born about this time next year, and the promise I am making to you and your family will be for him and his descendants forever. God finished speaking to Abraham and then left. On that same day, Abraham obeyed God by circumcising Ishmael. Abraham was also circumcised, and so were all other men and boys in his household, including his servants and slaves. He was 99 years old at the time, and his son Ishmael was 13. Okay, so that's also a little graphic, and to me, in my time, very disturbing. I'm not really sure why God chose this sign to be a sign of belonging to his people. That's definitely a question I might have for him one day. But I also think it's kind of interesting how a lot of people who have their names changed in the Bible, sometimes it's often by just one letter. For example, Abram to Abraham, it's 2 letters. Or like Sarah to Sarah, or Saul to Paul. Like it's usually pretty similar, I guess, to their original names, but somehow just a letter or 2 can make a lot of difference. I find that's very interesting. Okay, so chapter 18. This is the last chapter. The Lord promises Abraham his son. One hot summer afternoon, Abraham was waiting by the entrance to his tent near the sacred trees of Mamre when the Lord appeared to him. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He quickly ran to meet them, bowed with his face to the ground, and said, Please come to my home where I can serve you. I'll have some water brought so you can wash your feet. Then you can rest under the tree. Let me get you some food to give you strength before you leave. I would be honored to serve you. That's some pretty good hospitality. I don't think any of us would do that to a stranger we found on the street today. Thank you very much, they answered. We accept your offer. Abram quickly went to his tent and said to Sarah, Hurry, get a large sack of flour and make some bread. After saying this, he rushed off to his herd of cattle and picked out one of the best calves, which his servant quickly prepared. He then served his guests some yogurt and milk together with the meat. While they were eating, he stood near them under the trees, and they asked, Where's your wife, Sarah? She is right there in the tent, Abraham answered. One of the guests was the Lord, and he said, I'll come back about this time next year, and when I do, Sarah will already have a son. Sarah was behind Abraham, listening at the entrance to the tent. Abraham and Sarah were very old, and Sarah was well past the age for having children. So she laughed and said to herself, Now that I am worn out and my husband is old, will I really have such happiness? The Lord asked Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh? Does she doubt that she can have a child in her old age? I am the Lord. There is nothing too difficult for me. I'll come back next year at the time I promised, and Sarah will already have a son. Sarah was so frightened that she lied and said, I didn't laugh. Yes, you did, he answered. This is also adorable. I mean, the whole thing wasn't like, this is God. It's like, no, I didn't laugh. It's just super casual. Just God at your dinner table. Why not? He must be having a lot of fun with this. These kids, just like in the Garden of Eden, when God knows, he knows. There's no point hiding. There's no point denying. God already knows exactly what you've done, in the same way that a lot of the time we already know what our kids have done. They don't really have a point denying it either. So it's kind of funny. But sometimes you're just so stunned, and it said she's frightened. It's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction, maybe that's why. Maybe she's scared. She doesn't know what God would do to her if he found out that she was laughing. So she's just scared and wants to avoid what maybe she thinks is coming. So yeah, I guess that's human nature. Abraham prays for Sodom. When the three men got ready to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked part of the way with them. The Lord said to himself, I should tell Abraham what I am going to do. Since his family will become a great and powerful nation, that will be a blessing to all other nations on earth. I have chosen him to teach his family to obey me forever and to do what is right and fair. Then I will give Abraham many descendants, just as I promised. Beautiful soliloquies from God. The Lord said, Abraham, I have heard that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are doing all kinds of evil things. Now I am going down to see for myself if those people really are that bad. If they aren't, I want to know about it. The men turned and started towards Sodom. But the Lord stayed with Abraham, who asked, Lord, when you destroy the evil people, are you also going to destroy those who are good? Wouldn't you spare the city if there are only 50 good people in it? You surely wouldn't let them be killed when you destroy the evil ones. You are the judge of all the earth, and you do what is right. So I'm not sure if this is this does seem quite bold to ask God this. I don't know if I would ever have the guts to straight up ask God, you wouldn't really do this, would you? You're supposed to do the right thing, right? The Lord replied, if I find 50 good people in Sodom, I will save the city to keep them from being killed. Abram answered, I am nothing more than the dust of the earth. Please forgive me, Lord, for daring to speak to you like this. There it is. But suppose there are only 45 good people in Sodom. Would you still wipe out the whole city? If I find 45 good people, the Lord replied, I won't destroy the city. Suppose there are just 40 good people? Abram asked. Even for them, the Lord replied, I won't destroy the city. Abraham said, please don't be angry, Lord, if I ask you what you will do if there are only 30 good people in the city? If I find 30, the Lord replied, I still won't destroy it. Maybe you can see where this is going. Then Abraham asked, I don't have any right to ask you, Lord, but what would you do if you find only 20? Because of them, I won't destroy the city, was the Lord's answer. Finally, Abraham said, please don't get angry, Lord, if I speak just once more. Suppose you find only 10 good people there. For the sake of 10 good people, the Lord told him, I still won't destroy the city. After speaking with Abraham, the Lord left, and Abraham went back home. So that's the end of that chapter. I don't want to take too much longer, but I do find this last conversation just also very entertaining. A lot of things do remind me of kids, as I'm a mom, so everything kind of reminds me of my child. So it's kind of like this thing where sometimes kids will be like, I'm not supposed to do this, but what if I do it only a little bit? Is that allowed? I'm supposed to stay in my room, but what if I just stick one finger out of my room? Or what if I just stick a toe or foot out of my room? Is that going to bring down my mother's wrath? If I just put my nose out of the room? So this is what this kind of reminds me of. But also another note is this also sheds more light, again, on this whole thing of why does God let bad things happen? This is another part of it. God, you'll find out later that God does not want anybody to be lost. He wants everyone to be saved. For the sake of a few good people, God will allow a certain ecosystem to exist because these good people are they're helping with God's plan. And even 10 good people in a city of, I don't know, maybe thousands in Sodom and Gomorrah, that is enough to sort of combat evil and be a light for God. It doesn't matter if you're the only good person in maybe in your family or in your school or anything like that. If it feels like you're the only one, God can still use that. And that's still so valuable to God. And it also speaks to the fact that everybody has this goodness in them. Even if you're only, 10% good, that could be something that God is like, this 10% of good is going to do something that's going to have exponential effect. I still love this person for this 10% of good that they have in them. He loves you no matter what. But that 10% of good in a town or in a person is something that God wants to promote. He wants to let it grow. He doesn't want to destroy it. So that's another thing that I think is really, again, looking into the heart of God and why he does what he does. Just one more thing, I also find it super cool that throughout the Bible, you'll see that God comes down and just kind of hangs out with his humans, like this little dinner with Abraham and Sarah. And I just think that's really awesome. So God isn't distant. He doesn't let bad things happen. He allows, I guess, certain bad things to happen because it's part of his plan, but he's not just sitting there not caring about any of the bad that happens. He is present. He is holding the whole world in his hands, and he is very meticulously planning out what he's going to do. And honestly, I think whenever I think about it, it's like the fact that everyone deserves to be punished makes me really glad that God allows certain things to happen for a time, because you never know. I don't know what good will come out of it. And a lot of times I am able to see the good that has come out of just allowing somebody to grow out of their evilness, or that one good thing that a totally evil person did changed someone else's life. Like, we just don't know. We don't know. But one thing that we do know is that God will eventually destroy and get rid of all evil. And it might not be in the time that we want, it might not be in the way that we want or in the way that we understand, but we are assured of this. And the main thing is that God does not want anyone to be lost. And for that little seed of good, God is willing to go great lengths. So I hope you guys have a really great day. I'll probably be back later to do the live stream that I missed. So yeah, thanks so much.